All right. When we solve these, you will when you solve them, you will be given 5 questions, and you need to answer 4. Now, you can answer all 5 if you want, but you have to tell me which one not to grade. The university specifically forbids me from grading all of them and then just throwing out the one you did the worst on. So you have to choose. Yes. You have to pick one that you don't want graded. Yeah. So you'll have to do the multiple choice in one class period, in one sitting, and then you'll have to do the free response in one sitting. Whenever we're ready. So we're not, we're time-wise, we're doing okay. Maybe the end of next week-ish. Okay. All right, number 1. The value V of an investment plan is assumed to be growing over time according to the exponential growth model. Now, that equation, V of t is equal to V sub 0 e to the RT, is really confusing. What is it really? It's just PERT. So don't let that confuse you. It's just PERT. Okay. Currently, the annual growth rate is fixed at 3%. So A, you make an initial investment of $50,000. At what point in time will the value of your investment be equal to $65,000? That's pretty easy. 65,000 is equal to 50,000 e to the 0.03t. You see a variable in the exponent, so you need to be thinking logarithms. But before we can use the natural log, we need to divide by 50,000. And to make my life easier, I'm just going to say 65 over 50. Okay? So 65 over 50 is equal to e to the 0.03t, ln both sides. We can drop this down. So I get the ln of 65 over 50 is equal to 0.03t times the ln of e. But the ln of e is just 1. So I'm going to do the ln of 65 over 50 divided by 0.03. And notice the parentheses. Okay, if you don't put them in that order, it's not going to work. And the bottom one, I guess, doesn't need parentheses, but the top one does. So the ln of 65 divided by 50, and then I'm going to divide that by 0.03. What does that number tell us? How many years? So it takes 8.74 years to grow from the original 50,000 to the value of 65,000. Okay. B, your friend would also like to make an investment in this plan, but she would like to have a value of 65,000 in 5 years. How much will she need to invest initially in order to accomplish this goal? So in this one, we want to reach 65,000 with an unknown principal, e to the 0.03 times 5. Well, the goal is to solve for p. What's holding the p and the e together? Multiplication. So I'm just going to divide both sides by e to the, this is 0.15. So 65,000 divided by e to the 0.15. What does that mean? She needs to invest $55,946 in order to grow to 65 in 5 years. So I wonder if you just wrote it down wrong. This one, what did you use for E? Did you use the E button? It should be the same. 938. Huh. I wonder if you did like um, divided by e to the 0.15. Oh, so what you did, so you calculated this and then you rounded the decimal. So use as many decimals as you can, and that's why I try not to use decimals or just push second answer. But if your work is correct and you end up with that, you'll probably be okay. I mean, unless it's way off. But as long as you show your work, I can verify that you did it correctly, and you'd still get credit. Okay. Number 2. A tree farm has become infested with the beetle and is killing healthy trees. The region of dead trees is expanding in a circular pattern. The radius r, measured in meters, of this circular region has been observed to be growing over time, and the relationship is given by the function r of t is equal to the square root of 50t plus 100. The owner of the farm wants to spray the trees along the circumference of the circular region to stop the advance of the infestation. Recall that the circumference of a circle is a function of the radius of the circle, 2 pi r. So we have this area of infected trees. This is a top view. And every day, more trees get infected and they die. Okay, and the goal is to come in and spray these trees with some kind of insecticide that will kill the beetles, and then nothing outside of that can be infected. Okay. Well, there are two things happening. First, there is the rate of growth of this circle. So originally it was noticed the radius was that big, then the radius gets a little bigger, and the radius gets a little bigger, and the radius gets a little bigger. Also, the people running the tree farm need to know how many trees they're going to spray. Right? If I sprayed a day, then I have to spray a certain circumference. So how much do I need to spray circumference-wise? So there are two formulas. R of t is the square root of 50t plus 100. And what does that equation describe? That is the radius of the circle in time. So if we know we're going to have to wait 8 days before the spray makes it here, we're shipping it from the other side of the country. In 8 days, what is the circumference of the circle going to be? Okay. The other thing we need to know is the circumference is 2 pi r. What does that tell me? That is the circumference in, I guess in is the wrong word. Maybe I'll put using. So the radius using time and the circumference using the radius. Now, there will be a question like this on the test, and it seems really confusing because they're throwing out all sorts of variables, but it's really pretty simple. We want to know how big is the circle going to be when I'm ready to spray? Well, the circle gets bigger every day. The radius gets bigger every day. And when the radius gets bigger, the circumference gets bigger. So one way to figure this out, let's read A. The owner needs to know the circumference of the circle at the point in time when he will be ready to begin the spraying operation. Using the concept of composition of functions, determine the circumference C of the circular region of dead trees as a function of time. Indicate exactly how you are using the function c and r of t to get your answer. Do not change pi into a decimal. Keep it in exact form. So, for instance, what if it's going to take me 16 days before I'm ready to spray? I need to buy the equipment, I need to buy the spray, I need to hire somebody to spray. It's going to take me 16 days. How big of a circumference do I need to spray? How would you do that? So I need to take 16 days and plug it in there. So the square root of 50 times 16 plus 100. Oops, I missed. And I get 30. 30 what? Meters. Okay. What does this mean? In 16 days, I just made it up. Well, hold on. Yes, but that's not the goal. So I'm trying to describe to you how this function works. So if it's going to take me 16 days before I'm ready, the radius of the circle will be 30 meters. Well, if the radius of the circle is 30 meters, how big is the circumference going to be? Well, I need to take 30 and plug it into the circumference formula, and I get 2 times pi times 30, which is 60 pi. Now they want you to leave the answer in 60 pi, but if I told you that the radius is 60 pi, you're going to say, how big is that? Or sorry, the circumference. So it's going to be about 190. Not 30. 60 times pi is 188. What does that tell us? That is the circumference of the circle in 16 days. Okay? Well, what if I don't know how many days it's going to take to be set up? Right? I'm not sure when the equipment's going to be delivered. I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to get the insecticide and pay for somebody. So I want to create a function. And you'll notice I took 16 days and I plugged it into the R function. And then I took the answer from that and I plugged it into the C function. So I have C of R, and I also have R of T. So I'm going to create C composed with R of T, which means I'm going to plug R into C. Now the nice thing is you can't really screw this up. What if I tried to do it backwards? What if I tried to put C of R in for T? It can't be done because R matches R. So the instructions say, indicate exactly how you are using the function C and R of T to get your answer. You can't plug them in backwards because T is what we use, 16 days is what we use to find the radius. And then we plug the radius into the circumference formula. It doesn't make sense to do it the other way around. Can I put T in there? No, it's an R, not a T. So we're going to create C of R of T. It doesn't work the other way around. We can't say R of T of C of R. Right, that doesn't make any sense. So we go back up here. I am going to plug this equation in here. So 2 pi times r, but the r equation is the square root of 50t plus 100. Okay? So how do you describe that? You would write C of r and r of t, and I would just do something like this. Plug r of t into C of r. You just need to describe how you're composing the functions, or you could write it this way, however you want to describe it. Which is really silly because you can't screw this up. I mean, if you do, you're just not paying attention. Okay, what does this formula do here? Well, so let's go back up. What does this formula do? It gives you the radius using time. So that first formula turns time into radius. What does this formula do? It turns radius into circumference. So we're going to take time and turn it into radius and turn that into circumference. So T gets turned into R, which gets turned into C. What does this formula do? Using time. So this formula jumps from T to C. That's what composition of functions allows you to do. Right. So if you keep the functions separately, we turn time into radius, and then we use radius, plug it into the circumference formula to get C. Composition of function allows you to skip the middleman. You go straight from T to C. And if you had like 5 functions, A gets turned into B, and B gets turned into C, and C gets turned into D, and D gets turned into E, and E gets turned into F. If you compose all of them and simplify, then A gets turned into F, and you skip all the middle ground. That's what composition allows you to do. So, B, the farmer can only order enough spray to cover a circumference of 300 meters. Using the function that you just created, how many days will the circumference of the region be? After how many days will the circumference of the circular region be 300 meters? What do we need to do? Yep. Where am I going to put 300? No. So I have this function. Circumference is equal to 2 pi times the square root of 50t plus 100. I need to plug 300 in for C. So this is working backwards. It's saying I only have enough spray to spray 300 meters. How long do I have before the circle gets too big? So I'm going to divide by 2, and I get 150. Now what? Nope, not yet. Divide by pi, and it probably wants us to leave, oh no, decimal points. Okay, that's nice. So I have 150 divided by pi. Now what? Square it. So raise that to the second, and then subtract 100, and then divide by 50. What does that mean? 43.59 days. Well, 1 decimal point. 43.6 days. What does that mean in the story? So if I wait 44 days, it'll be what? The circle will have a circumference bigger than 30 meters, and I don't have enough spray to cover it. So as long as I spray before 43.6 days, I have enough to do it. Now, if you if you're growing a tree farm, when are you going to spray? As soon as you can, because if the trees die, then you don't get to harvest them and get paid for them. Okay? All right, number 3. 2 years ago, the publisher of a national business weekly magazine began offering incentives for subscribers who renew their subscription. Since then, they have been tracking the number N of their subscribers who do not renew their subscription based on the data. They have derived a formula to predict the number of subscribers who do not renew their subscriptions. Wow, this is a tongue twister. As a function of the number of months X from the present time. All right, so we have, I'm just going to put Y is equal to 10,000 over X plus 1. And it says 0 is less than or equal to X, which is less than or equal to 24. All right, determine the inverse of the function. How do we find the inverse? We just switch every y into an x and every x into a y. So x equals 10,000 over y plus 1. How do we solve for y? We can just cross multiply. 10,000 is equal to x times y plus 1. Now what? Divide by x, and I get 10,000 over x is equal to y plus 1. Now I subtract 1, and I get that. Now, I didn't write that very well. Let me fix that. So 10,000 over x minus 1 equals y. Okay, that's pretty easy. Using set notation, what is the range of the inverse function determined in part A? Set notation, just intervals. Okay, what is the range of this function? It's the domain of the original. What was the domain of the original? Well, they told us. They said this equation only works for 2 years, from 0 to 24 months. After that, this equation no longer is valid. Does the equation actually extend outside of that domain? Yes, but they told us that that equation does not exist. So make sure you understand that, because the range of this is going to be some number that you can gather from the graph, but the original function had a domain restriction, so the range is going to be 0 less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 24. And notice in the other one it said x, in the original it said x, and in the inverse it says y. Okay. What is the variable in the inverse function? So right here, what does that variable represent? The number of months or the number of subscribers? Why subscribers? Well, let's go back to the original. What does this original function tell us? If I plug in, what am I plugging in? Months. So in the original function, if I plug in months, then it spits out subscribers. So the original function uses the number of months to predict the number of subscribers. So if I go down to the inverse, those have switched. So now this function here will take subscribers and tell you how many months it has been. So 2 is the answer. Subscribers, number 2. Or double I. Okay, 4. Hey, there were no, this one didn't have any decibel or earthquake problems. Okay, 4. A patient is going to be given a drug after surgery using a continuous IV infusion. The concentration C of the drug at the time t hours after the start of the infusion is modeled by the function. C is equal to 100t over 2t plus 4. And t has to be greater than or equal to 0. According to this function, what is the initial concentration of the drug at time t? Just plug in 0. When you plug in 0, you get 0 divided by 0 plus 4. What is 0 over 4? 0. That makes sense. Why would the concentration of the drug in your veins be 0 at time 0? They haven't put it in yet, right? 0 is when they click go. So that drug's going to go into your body continuously. What's going to happen to the concentration in your blood? It's going to go up forever? Now eventually, what has to happen? Eventually it has to level off. So they're going to put, I don't know, what's a drug that they, let's say you have, does it say? Nope. So you go have surgery and they're worried that you're going to get an infection, so they give you an antibiotic. And they give you a certain amount of antibiotic continuously. It's always coming in. So the amount of antibiotic in your body is going to start to raise, but your body will metabolize. It's kind of like digest, sort of, use. We'll start using it up, and eventually the amount in your blood will level off, and it will never get higher than a certain amount. So the graph is going to look something like this. And there is some threshold that it's going to get closer and closer to, but it will never reach. And the doctors prescribe the medication in such a way that it will reach a certain threshold. So the doctor says, okay, you need to have this much, and if you have this much, you won't get an infection. If they add more, if they change the drip so it's a little bit faster, then that threshold will go higher. If they slow down the drip, then that threshold will go lower. And so the doctors can determine how much drug is in the little bag that they give you, and how fast are they going to let it go into your body. They figure all that out. Okay, so to begin with, there is no drug in your blood. B. According to this function, at what time will the concentration of the drug be equal to 40 milligrams per liter? So I want to know, how long is it going to take to get to 40? So where am I going to plug 40? In for C. So 40 is equal to 100t over 2t plus 4. What should I do here? Cross multiply. So 40 times 2t is 80t. 40 times 4 is 160 is equal to 100t. Yes. Anytime you have fraction equals fraction, you can cross multiply. The other way to do it, I could have just done 2t plus 4 to both sides, and you'll get the exact same answer. Is that how you did it? Okay, yeah, that works. All right, so I need to subtract 80t, and I get 160 equals 20t, divide by 20, and I get t equals 8. What does that mean? After, what is our t in hours? So after 8 hours, we will reach 40. Okay. Oh, and C, were there only 4 questions? Oh. Wonder what I did with it. Oh well. Okay, letter C. In the long run, what value will the concentration of the drug approach? What is that asking? What is that asking for? In the long run, what will the concentration of the drug approach? It wants to know, where is this value? Graphically, what do we call that value? Um, well, so the maximum would be something like this, where we can identify where it kind of changes directions. Does this have a maximum? It's going to get closer and closer to the line, but it will never max out. What? We're looking for the horizontal asymptote. So let's really quickly review horizontal asymptote. If I had like 6x to the 5th over 9x to the 9th, and again, there's lots of other stuff there, where would the HA be for this equation? The HA in this equation equals 0, and that's a y value, because the bottom is stronger than the top. So this simplifies down to 1 over x to the 4th. Well, it's actually 2/3. And if I plug in infinity, 1 divided by infinity is 0, right? If you take a number and you cut it into an infinite number of pieces, each piece is going to be really close to 0. Okay? So what is the HA if I have 7, let's not do 7, let's do 18x to the 4th over 15x to the 4th, and then there's lots of other stuff. Where is the HA? 6/5. Because the x's cancel, and 18 over 5, I pull out a 3, and I get 6 and 5. Okay? What if I have 9x to the 4th over 12x to the 3rd? Where's the HA? Nope. No. Where is the HA? It's a trick question. There is no HA. Why? The top is bigger than the bottom, so it doesn't have an HA. It has a slanted asymptote, right? Which is going to be 3/4. It has a slope of 3/4. How do I find that equation? We did it yesterday. You do division. You do long division. And you stop when you get to the constant. And you can just throw the remainder away. The remainder doesn't have any effect on it. Okay. If the top is 1 bigger than the bottom, it's slanted. If it's 2 bigger, it's a quadratic. If it's 3 bigger, it's a cubic. So let's go back to, where was I? Let's go back to here. Where is the HA for this equation? $100T divided by 2T is 50. So this mark right here is 50. Will the concentration in your blood ever be 50 milligrams per liter or whatever it was? No. But eventually it will be so close to 50 you can't tell the difference. 49.999999999, which essentially is 50. Okay, can I borrow somebody's? I don't have a question 5 on my version for some reason. Oh, there is a... Sorry. I told you there wasn't an earthquake problem, but there was. Using the Richter scale, the magnitude of an earthquake M is determined by the amount of seismic energy E measured in joules released by the earthquake. The Richter scale value assigned to the earthquake is determined using the equation magnitude is equal to 2/3 log, and I'm going to write it 10 just to remind you, of E over 10 to the 4.4. So basically, if you know how much energy was in, oh, here, you want this? If you know how much energy was released, then you can calculate the magnitude. An earthquake that releases the amount of energy given by 10 to the 13.4 results in a Richter scale value of 6. Find the Richter scale value for an earthquake that releases 10 to the 15.4 joules. This is 100 times greater than the first earthquake. So I'm basically just going to take 10 to the 15.4 and stick it in for E. So 2/3 log of 10 raised to the 15.4 divided by 10 raised, not delete, sorry, raised to the 4.4. And then make sure you put your parenthesis down like that. And I get 7.3. So how much stronger is a 7.3 earthquake compared to a 6 earthquake? 100 times stronger. Yeah. B, a report indicates that an earthquake has a Richter scale value of 8. Determine the amount of energy released by this earthquake. So if I know that M is equal to 8, how much energy was released? So I'm going to stick that in there. 8 is equal to 2/3 log base 10 of E over 10 to the 4.4. So I need to move the 2/3. How do you move the 2/3 to the other side? Multiply by 3 over 2. So 8 times 2/3. Nope, that's not. 8 times 3/2 is what I wanted. I get 12. So 12 equals log base 10 of E over 10 to the 4.4. Now what should I do? Convert to exponents. So 10 to the 12th equals E over 10 to the 4.4. I need to multiply by 10 to the 4.4. So the answer is simply 10 to the 12th. I converted, so I took this equation and I converted to exponent. 10 raised to the 12th is equal to this stuff. That's just a logarithmic exponential conversion. So 10 to the 12th times 10 to the 4.4. Now, that's not in the same form. So they like to do 10 to the exponent. And I ended up with 2.51 e to the 16th. And that is a totally valid answer. So if I were you, I would just leave it there. But if you wanted to convert it, this is how you do it. So 10 to the x is equal to 2.5 e to the 16th. How do you solve that? ln both sides, drop the x. X ln of 10 is equal to ln of 2.5 e to the 16th over the ln of 10. So the ln of the answer divided by the ln of 10 gives me 16.4. So 10 to the 16.4. Well, so when they do earthquakes, they usually put the energy in that form, but it doesn't say that you have to, right? So 2.5 e to the 16.4 is the answer. That's how much energy it is. But that is not in that form. Right? How do you move the decimal 16.4 places? I don't know. Right? You can't do it. But that is a number that works. So I wanted to convert it into 10 to the x. So I just said 10 to the x equals that. And then I solved for x and I got 16.4. You don't need to do it that way. No. So this number and this number are exactly the same. They're just in different forms. Yeah, because the test does not tell you which form you have to put it in. So any form works. If you want to write them all out, you could do that too. But I wouldn't. Okay. Is that the last part? We're done.